With the advent of air power, the North American continent can no longer count on the polar cap and the surrounding oceans as natural defensive barriers. The great speed and high altitude capabilities of modern jet bombers and missiles confront us with a critical defense problem. The attack can come at any time, from any place. To meet this threat, an air defense system has been built, a system of many parts, from early warning networks to the weapons of the SAGE system. This system must be trained, and in a peacetime environment of thousands of daily friendly flights. A modern air defense system must be prepared that will be capable of detecting a single hostile bomber and powerful enough to handle an all-out attack. In a typical day, over 2,500 flights may be seen on the situation display consoles of a single SAGE direction center. And all of these flights must be monitored and identified so that possible hostiles can be detected. The tremendous volume of factual data required to keep up with the constantly changing air picture is processed by a giant high-speed electronic computer attached to the direction center. The tactical decisions, however, must be made by men, the crews of the Air Defense Command. Out of the complicated air picture representing many flights, the crews must be able to isolate any one individual flight, which might be a hostile aircraft. Once the unknown has been pinpointed, the whole machinery of the Air Defense Command swings into action. From the direction center, the weapons direction team controls a flight of our fighter interceptors to the target for positive identification. This multi-million-dollar defense organization, operated by thousands of trained specialists, was designed not only for air surveillance against sneak attacks, but as a weapon capable of defending against mass attacks during war. The problem is to provide training of Air Force crews which will develop this potential, enabling them to interact swiftly and decisively as a complete system under maximum stress, a system capable of being exercised and perfected, a system which can be continuously evaluated as an instrument of defense. To assist the Air Force in carrying out this training mission, the System Development Corporation was established with offices in Santa Monica, California. Here, during the development of the manual air defense system, exact replicas of aircraft control and warning operations rooms, manned with Air Force crews, enabled scientists to develop three major training principles. The first basic principle involves the realistic simulation of inputs to the system. It was known that maximum benefits result from training if the simulated environment is as close to real life as possible.
Amos has a B-52 on that one up north.
The second basic principle is the regular, frequent exercise of this system as a whole. The third training principle, knowledge of results, is shown in the debriefing meeting, where crews discuss ways of improving performance based on the results of the problem they have just finished.
We're concerned with, I believe the HRI man can probably give us a little explanation of this.
Ron, do you have some information on that?
Well, initial pickup on the track was 15,000.
Teams of scientists, including psychologists, educators, and air defense specialists, observe how the crews go about solving their problems.
I see. Well, does anybody have a solution?
The principles which have proved so effective are now being applied to the SAGE System Training Program. System Development Corporation training specialists and problem designers work closely with the military in planning a typical SAGE STP problem in a SAGE direction center.
Something here might be, I think we'd be better to have maybe possibly 2 attacks come through here, possibly one up further here to really test him on whether to scramble from this area or to use his own fighters.
How about
possibly
bringing it
on
right
the
in
border.
on the borderline?
That's very good.
That's a good idea. Then the first report makes it apparent to the senior director here that he can legitimately call on the weapons.
that are assigned for scramble to the Boston sector. You remember we also have the skater deviant that appears in the problem after skater has been called, coming from Tuna right into New York. Now, if the senior director commits all of New York's weapons against this hostile attack, we'll still have him coming or going. Then he'll have to scramble weapons to ID this skater deviant from one of the air bases in the adjacent sectors.
I see then what you've injected in the problem.
After military commanders have approved the problem design, the job of translating training goals into an actual SAGE STP problem begins. The problem design group takes the general concepts developed in the field and draws up the specific flights which will fulfill the training requirements. This is a painstaking task, as many factors affecting each flight are taken into account. The types of planes, each turn they would take on their total flight paths, the coverages of the ground radars. These specifications and dozens more are written up in the form of manuscripts in computer language, because a computer is used to produce the actual problem. Once the manuscripts are completed, they go to problem production. But first, they must be put in a form the computer can accept. Punched cards, thousands of them. The second operator repeats the entire punching cycle to eliminate human error. Cards then enter a high-speed computer for processing. While all this is going on, the computer is receiving instructions from previously recorded tapes. The result is a new magnetic tape recording containing the radar data for SAGE STP problems. The entire problem is printed for checking by the problem designers before the problem is ready for the field. Information on some of the tapes is converted to punched cards, which are used to produce the multitude of SSTP aids required in each problem. Periodically, problem tapes are checked in the FSQ-7 computer at the System Development Corporation to ensure that the problems are compatible with the operational programs which are prepared by SDC for the SAGE system. The SSTP problem tapes, along with the many simulation aids to complete the problem packages, are prepared for shipment to SAGE direction centers throughout the country. In the Direction Center, the problems are received by the SAGE System Training Unit. At the start of the exercise, the problem tape begins to feed simulated long-range radar data into the memory of the computer. The synthetic data is processed by the same programmed instructions that are used in normal operations. Additional information begins to flow from the manual data room through pre-punched cards. And so the air picture begins to build for the operational crew. As far as they are concerned, the simulated data they are receiving are coming from the usual input sources, such as messages received from airborne early warning aircraft, radar data from Texas towers, track messages from the Navy's picket ships, automatic returns from long-range and gap-filler radars, and weather reports which appear to come from information supplied from far-flung meteorological stations, interaction with anti-aircraft defenses, and cross-tell messages from adjacent manual direction centers. The simulation of these inputs provides the necessary realism in SSTP missions. Simulated primary radar data from long-range and gap-filler radars enters directly into the computer from reels of SSTP magnetic tape. Inputs from other external agencies which would transmit data by telephone and telegraph lines enter the manual data room in exactly the same way as in real life, except that it comes from simulation personnel. As in normal operations, the information is converted to punched cards and fed into the system. Operations personnel in the air surveillance room now are presented with the process data. As in real life, they must assist the computer in establishing tracks and in maintaining the usual track monitoring functions. Tracks requiring identification appear on the displays in the identification room, where such pending tracks can be compared with flight plan information, which also appears on the displays. When it is necessary to telephone the Air Movements Identification section of the CAA, the identification officer actually calls up an Amos simulator in another room in the DC. Tracks requiring action from weapons direction personnel appear on the displays in the weapons direction room. The senior director calls the weapons director to order scrambles against tracks which require identification by interception. The weapons director assigns one of his intercept directors against a specific track and also calls for a scramble of interceptor aircraft from an appropriate airbase. In SSDP, these airbases are, in fact, represented by an airbase simulator in the training and battle simulation room. The airbase simulator passes the scramble information to the intercept pilot simulator, who, by means of his special console, flies the interceptor to the target, guided by the instruction of the intercept director. During the course of a problem, simulators interact with operational crews, answering questions and providing a normal continuity of inputs, many of which originate in the analysis and training room. Such information as the weapon status of an airbase is relayed by an airbase simulator to a teletype operator, who prepares the message for transmission by punching teletype tape, which is fed by a teletype transmitter operator into the appropriate transmission channel. These messages are received automatically by teletype machines in the manual data room. Here, a manual data room technician follows regular procedures in transferring the information to punched cards. Data on the punched cards is then fed directly into the computer. The flow of information into the system through the manual data room is monitored by the manual data supervisor. Throughout the exercise, certain actions taken by the crew are noted and recorded by members of the Training Operations Report, or TOR team. If, for any reason, a punched card is not accepted by the computer, it is brought to the attention of the manual data supervisor.
Reject on fact that on too.
Thus, the rejected card is located and is examined to find the cause for rejection. Sifting out critical flights begins in the air surveillance room. A TOR observer watches the progress in his situation display console. TOR observers make a note of difficulties encountered by crew members, their utilization of displays, and interactions between crew personnel at critical points, actions which are not recorded automatically by the computer. The design of STP problems includes air traffic situations stressing the identification function, such that while some tracks are critical and require immediate tactical action, others may be of such a nature that they require additional information to determine their status. The Amos simulator, with telephones, flight plans, and scripts, provides flight plan information on request.
Boston Amos, disregard Boston calling New York. Raj. New York Amos. Roger, New York, this is Occasion. Do you have a progress report on a match 32689? Raj, wait one. Okay, Raj, here it is. He's coming up tuna 1633, checking South Island 1702. Thank you, Roger Charlie. Willie Love.
Those tracks that are identified unknown or hostile appear on the displays in the weapons direction room. As in normal operations, the senior weapons director and his technician call attention to a track if action is not taken immediately by the weapons direction team, responsible for the area in which the track appears. The weapons director, using operational procedures, feeds data through his tech into the computer before the scramble is called in. Whenever an airbase is called by a weapons direction team during a problem run, the telephone call goes to a simulator who represents the airbase. He writes the scramble instructions on an intercept mission sheet. These instructions, along with the aids, such as fuel consumption charts appropriate to the interceptors being scrambled, are given to an intercept pilot simulator. The IPS inserts into the computer the initial scramble information. The assigned interceptor director stands by while the interceptor is scrambled. The IPS waits a necessary interval to become airborne. Once the interceptor attains altitude, the intercept director sees a track representing the interceptor on his display. From now on, he will control the intercept by command instruction to the IPS, who manipulates the track as if he were flying an actual aircraft. The simulation of interactions between a SAGE sector being trained and adjacent manual direction centers is handled by a weapons direction simulator. During initial phases of SSTP, personnel on the training unit are available when STP missions are being run. The capabilities of anti-aircraft weapons are included in SAGE STP exercises. Interaction takes place between Army AA personnel in the weapons direction room and the SAGE direction center. Participation of the battle staff in the command post when required by STP exercises involves interaction with simulated or real control centers, the reception of early warning and intelligence reports, alerts, and higher command decisions. The senior officers are able to follow the progress of the air battle by calling up special displays on a large projection screen. The displays are projected from a booth above the command post. The Kelvin Hughes unit photographs, develops, dries, and projects 35mm films taken of selected situation displays. Now let us follow a problem track through the SAGE system from the time it first appears to the completion of an interception. The track initiator supervisor monitors the air picture and by switch action draws the attention of one of the track initiators to a particular bit of uncorrelated radar data. Data which the track initiator may have missed in his area of responsibility is pointed out by the arrow. This STP-generated radar data is now made into a track by the action of the track initiator, as in normal operations. The computer assigns track number Juliet 015 to this track, which now appears in the identification room. The actions of the identification section are watched by the TOR observer. The IDO compares the track with known flight plans. A flight plan has been included in the STP problem that comes close to the pending track. The IDO calls up air movements data to see if the flight plan falls within the limits prescribed for flight plan correlation. In the weapons direction room, the TOR observer follows the development of the mission. By checking his aids, he finds that track Juliet 015 should be appearing as an unknown. He calls the TOR member in identification and is informed that the track has just been established as an unknown, requiring interception for positive identification. The scramble on track Juliet 015 is called in to the airbase simulator.
This is Occasion. I have a scramble for you.
Preliminary scramble instructions for the interceptor are punched into the pilot's console. The The intercept director sees the symbology indicating the scramble status of interceptor Lima Papa 01.
Occasion Lima Papa 01, airborne 5 miles southeast of base, heading 180, passing through Angels 9, over.
Roger, Lima Papa 01. Occasion has weapon contact. Continue present heading, level Angels 25.
Lima Papa 01, roger. Level Angels 25.
Lima Papa 01, your target tracking 310, speed 245 knots, 21,000 feet. Over.
Lima Papa 01, roger. Target information.
Lima Papa 01, port 152.
Lima Papa 01, roger. Port 152.
Lima Papa 01, starboard 172.
Lima Papa 01, roger. Starboard 172.
Lima Papa 01, time to go 4 minutes. Check armament.
Occasion Lima Papa 01, armament check complete. Fuel 6,000 pounds. Oxygen sweet.
Lima Papa 01, roger. Pigeons to base 320, 76 miles.
Lima Papa 01, roger. Pigeons.
Lima Papa 01, your attack heading will be 265. This will be an identification pass. Time to go 2 minutes.
Lima Papa 01, roger. Identification pass. Attack heading 265.
Lima Papa 01, starboard 265. This is your attack heading.
Lima Papa 01, roger. Turning starboard 265.
Vectoring instructions are given continually while the interceptor is approaching the final phase of intercept.
Lima Papa 01, target now 26 port 8.
Lima Papa 01, roger. Judy.
Roger, Judy. Occasion standing by.
Occasion Lima Papa 01, tally-ho, 1 aircraft. Commercial markings, 4-engine Constellation. Do you request the numbers?
Roger, 01. Proceed with numbers.
Occasion Lima Papa 01, aircraft tail numbers November Charlie 15721, heading 312, 21,000 feet.
Roger, Lima Papa 01. Occasion copy, November Charlie 15721, breakaway heading 355.
The end of a completed interception as Lima Papa 01 returns to base, guided home by the intercept director. Every action taken by the crew through the computer has been recorded on a master operations recording tape during the mission. The SAGE system training mission is followed by a series of debriefing meetings. The form these debriefings take is not rigid, but can be varied to meet the needs of military crews. One variation is a series of subsection debriefings, followed by a general meeting of representatives of each group. Personnel in the manual data room discuss problems which arose during the course of the exercise.
Before each mission. Now the next problem we have is the TOR person mentioned that we're too slow in getting our MI track information to the 020 operator.
I think that's the transcription clerk's fault. He's giving me 4 and 5 tracks on one slip, and I make mistakes both in my punching, and my first track's a minute behind before I even get started, before I get it.
Well, not much I can do about it, Steve. I ordinarily could give them to you one at a time, but then they swamp me once in a while. That's all I can do to keep up with them. I have to write them all on one sheet.
Well, can't you write them down once? Put one track on one slip and quick give it to me?
But as soon as I finish one, I have to write the other one or I'll miss it, and so I have to put them all on one slip.
Suppose we eliminate a step here and have you take the information directly over the phone. Is that?
I don't think that's going to work. It'll increase my errors in punching. I'll be doing 2 jobs at once.
Let you and Kirsch get a couple phones and an unused key punch and a script tomorrow during the training period and give it a try.
Feedback provided in the training operations report gives air surveillance a chance to evaluate its performance in such operations as track initiation and monitoring.
Problem next, Lieutenant.
Yes, according to TOR, we were late in initiating. I think it was about 7 returns late initiating on this track that ultimately became Juliet 015. And Hollister, I believe that was in your area. Why was that?
Yes, sir. I think it's the track I'm thinking about. At that particular time, I was busy with radar data around Philadelphia, and I was turning on and off my history radar data, trying to initiate on tracks. When I got things cleaned up pretty well, I turned the history back on and left it on. About the same time, I saw the attention arrow out in the ADIS, so I initiated on it right away. But by that time, there was quite a string of data.
I think one thing we should keep in mind here is that tracks coming in from over the sea, penetrating the ADIS, should receive attention prior to those that are initiated within the sector or that are within the sector. I think we should pay primary attention to those.
Well, traffic was comparatively late up in the northern half. Why can't I lend a hand and initiate down the southern half?
Now, that's a good point, too. Perhaps you could do this if the situation so developed along those lines. But I think primarily, again, we must remember to give primary attention to these outer ADIS areas.
The identification officer and his technician had their own problems to contend with, some of which will be brought up later in the subsection representatives meeting.
The skater becomes more completely implemented.
Well, that would take care of the manning requirements for a stress load condition. But this leaves us with a skater deviant problem, and I don't quite know what to do about that.
The weapons direction crew may also hold their meeting outside of their operations room. A good debriefing helps the crew find solutions to problems which arose in the air defense exercise.
Possibility, as I mentioned before, of getting your reports in on these missions as soon as you can after your mission is completed.
Yes, sir. We had a problem today. Ackerman was busy calling GCA and RAPCON on recovery procedures, so he was unable to call it in at that time, but we'll do better on that.
Okay, good enough. You bring up this matter of the interaction between you and your tech. How's it been working out now that we have a tech permanently assigned to an IND, and in the hopes we did this, that you'd work better as a team? How's it going along?
I think Kelly and I have a good working relationship here. We've devised sort of a brevity code where I mention a certain word which saves a lot of chatter and sets up a series of actions that Kelly takes, such as when I say shoot, he knows that I want to reinitiate something, and he takes certain switch actions. And when I mention the word tactics, he takes switch actions so that special actions I want to take after that are a lot quicker to take. It saves a lot of confusion.
And when you say show me, sir, that means I'm going to call up a DID of some sort for you.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Sergeant, would you make a note to get together with Kelly here and note down this code that they've been using, and then if the rest of the techs will get together and look over this log, why, perhaps you can use the same sort of thing.
That's worked out very well for Captain Bonds and myself.
It saves a lot of confusion.
We'll get together right afterwards.
Finally, subsystem representatives meet to discuss the exercise as it affected the entire Direction Center crew and actions taken by the various groups to initiate the solving of problems.
Well, sir, we had some discussion about the consoles and communication, nothing serious, just the usual. There was, however, that skater deviant, Juliet 015, coming across the ADIS, which we were late on initiating on. And we discussed this with our people, and I believe that our initiators are impressed with the importance of initiating early on anything coming across from the seaward side now. And I think they appreciate the seriousness of the problem, and I certainly hope that this won't happen again. Is that right, Lieutenant?
That's right, sir. Also, we worked out a system which we're going to try involving a reapportioning of the workload in times of a heavy stress on the initiators.
Good enough.
Yes.
It would help ID if you could initiate on these tracks as promptly as possible when they're coming in over the water. This skater deviant might have been correlated if it had been initiated on when it first appeared. As it was just outside of correlation limits when we identified it unknown.
That's right, the speed and altitude were okay, but it was touch and go outside the correlation box.
Yes, I was just reluctant to identify it anything other than unknown, although we might have been able to save a flight of interceptors.
Yeah, that's correct. We had no trouble getting our fighters up there and identifying him. Because it was a low-speed track, had it been a fast track, why, we never would have made it in time. And as you say, this committed 2 of our birds, which it turned out later we could have used very well on that raid coming in from the north.
Let's keep on top of that initiation procedure, Captain, and let me know how it works out. Now, does Tor have anything to add?
No, sir, we have nothing further on this.
The extent to which the training goals have been reached provides the basis for feedback meetings for future planning.
I'd like to discuss some of the new features that are coming into the system that we can look forward to in the future. For example, I understand the Home Office is working on a method to increase the capability of the training program to handle augmented crews.
Right, and when we get this, why, we'll be able to handle not just one crew, but the whole battle staff and the fully augmented crew.
I think this is an excellent idea, and we've been training peacetime crews in a wartime situation. And I believe this will lead us into a division.
And so the training of the SAGE system continues, adapting and changing to meet the needs of a flexible air defense system.